Fáilte gur obairsteach a cháirdeach ag agrán I bhar 23 de Blúiríní Béaloidis an podcréile a tíocht tugh ó Críolóir na cartaine an seo is de hignúsach for the Éireann Cláis na Hoscoile Bailach Lia. You're welcome along to episode number 43 of Folklore Fragments, the podcast coming to you from the National Folklore Collection here in University College Dublin. And it's a huge privilege and an honour today to be with our guest Steve Roud.
Hello.
And welcome in, Steve, who is a bit of a hero of ours at the NFC and who's been coming over and visiting us and doing research and working on our collections now for the last 4 years. But for many years before that, Steve has been working on the Roud Index. So any aficionados of nerds of folk song will know Steve's index and the Roud Numbers. I should warn people listening to this or watching the video that we will have no singing of folk songs today.
No.
It's just going to be nerding out about indices, basically.
Yes, no singing or dancing or enjoying yourself in any way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is very important to note at the outset. There will be no enjoyment of anything until morale improves. And so we're going to talk about... So, Steve, you're visiting us for the week and sort of working through our collections and adding into your index. And while poor Steve is here, we're strong-arming him into giving workshops to staff and colleagues and subjecting you to this experience now in terms of going to talk about your work. So just for the benefit of listeners or people watching this who aren't familiar with your work, I'll sort of read out some of the charges laid against you and give a rundown of things. But yeah, Steve is the creator of the Roud Folk Song Index and an expert on folklore and folkloristics and popular customs. You were a retired local studies librarian, and an honorary and also served as an honorary librarian for the Folklore Society for 18 years. Steve has written books on calendar customs, popular customs, superstitions, folklore of London, and on children's games and folk drama. And your background in folklore has brought you to specialise particularly in the area of folk song research.
Yes.
Which is where you clearly have an indexing problem, I think it's fair to say.
Yes.
And so as part of that, I suppose, where most of your energies have been directed these days, I think it'd be fair to say, is into your index, the Roud Index. And so as a background to that, the Roud Folk Song Index is a database is approximately, you said yesterday, 750,000 entries now?
Yes, just over.
So 3/4, so people can think there are nearly over 750,000 individual entries to books, manuscripts, recordings.
And anywhere else a song can appear.
A folk song can appear.
A folk song can appear, yes.
And of those 750,000 roughly entries, they relate to how many songs exactly?
Right, about 45,000 songs.
40,000 separate songs.
Separate songs that I reckon are traditional, in inverted commas.
Now the trouble starts.
Yes, stamped folk songs. But another 80,000 songs, which were popular songs in the 18th, 19th century.
Okay.
So they may well have been folk songs, we just don't know.
Gotcha, okay. And I suppose, like, part of this, again, for people listening or watching who aren't familiar, one of the problems that folklorists or that we working in folklore archives or managing folklore collections or researchers interested in particular subjects or topics that pertain to aspects of folk tradition, we're constantly dealing with the problem of variability of form.
Yeah.
And so in the context of folk song, informal sort of songs maybe that appear in either ephemeral publications or part of oral tradition, it's very hard to have a fixed sort of point for that song. And so what your work tries to do in parallel, say, to approaches a folk tale index, where a tale like Cinderella is given a number in an international sort of accepted index that allows us to find many versions of that one tale that may have many different names. Yours does that to sort of lock a frame, one Roud number around a particular folk song in as many of its variants that you have sort of identified or recorded.
Yeah, that's right, because by definition, a folk song has variant versions, same with the folk tale.
Yeah.
It's one of the ways we recognise that a song is traditional, in inverted commas again, because it's sung in different ways by different people.
Yeah,
and that's the problem for the cataloguer and the indexer. We don't have, even if we have an original of the song, which we sometimes do, that's not what matters. It's what people have done so done with the song. So the first thing I want you to learn, listeners, is it's not the origin of a song that makes it a folk song. It's what the folk do with it.
It's the interactions that people have with these objects, for want of a better word.
With the object of the song.
With the song.
It's true for the whole of folklore, really. But the folk, whoever they are, can take songs from it wherever they want. There are no rules. But as soon as they start singing them amongst themselves and learning it amongst themselves, it becomes a folk song.
Yeah.
So.
And we, however, are obsessed with rules and defining things into neatly sort of categorizable layers of information in terms of because we want to either access information or connect people to information, large amounts of information. And so just for a bit of background for people, maybe in your own sort of life and growing up, how did you get into this mess, as it were?
Right.
How did this body of work start? Because it's incredible. It's now internationally accepted. It's been widely acclaimed in terms of as this index that's absorbed other folk song indices, in terms of its scope and breadth, the different fields that you'd have in terms of the metadata. So how did it start?
Yeah, I must confess that I made it up as I went along, especially at the beginning. I became a professional librarian in my 30s. Yeah. But I started this way before that. So I was trying to invent the database before computers came out, basically. I was interested in folklore as I suppose as a child. I was in the Woodcraft Folk, which is in England, it's a children's organisation like the Scouts and the Girl Guides.
Oh, amazing.
But it's mixed. It's boys and girls. Mm-hmm. So we could do dancing and other things. And it was left-wing, whereas the Scouts and Guides, certainly in my day, were not left-wing at all.
I don't know that, no.
Anyway, so I had a sort of vague interest in campfire songs and folk dancing and that sort of stuff. And then I used to index my pop records as I bought them.
As one does.
Sure, other people do, yes. And then I used to buy what was called the Melody Maker in my day, in the 60s. And then I'd start indexing what was in there, in case I needed to know who was in the charts and how long it had been, sort of obsessive kind of thing. And then when I got more interested in folk song and I learned that there was a tradition behind the folk revival that I was part of, that's when it became what it is now, when I actually started again indexing my own records and books. Then I discovered that the library had a few more books, a local library, and then it
went from there.
It grew from there, but really I didn't know what I was doing. I was making it up. But the basic, I seemed to have understood the basic principles of information retrieval without knowing it. So maybe I was a born librarian. I don't know. It's possible.
It's something that resonates with me because I remember coming in here and having this overwhelming sense of sort of, on the one hand, being bowled over by the realisation of this sort of landscape, a cultural landscape of folk tradition, and sort of falling in love with that, but then also falling in love with literally this place and the descriptors, the indices, the catalogues, the realisation that there was this layer behind the material which was related to sort of systematising of information across these really broad subject headings, which I thought was normal until I undertook formal archival studies as well. So I suppose in terms of your own work then, you started with this out of personal interest, but your work has been really highly acclaimed and sort of recognised internationally. You were the winner of the Folklore Society's Katharine Briggs Folklore Award for the Penguin Guide to the Superstitions of Britain and Ireland. You were awarded the Gold Badge of the English Folk Dance and Song Society. And that award recognised those who made unique or outstanding contributions to the art or science of folk dance, music or song, and or those who have given exceptional support in furthering the aims of the Society. And you've also received the Walford Award by the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals Information Services Group. and your New Penguin Book of English Folk Songs won the Reference Award for the previous year. And so the work that you've been doing is really...
Can I just brag a little?
Please.
Add one to that.
Oh, yes.
I'm getting an honorary doctorate from
wow.
the Open University.
Oh, incredible.
Next month.
No way.
So if you interview me again, I'll be Doctor.
Ah, insist. I'll start calling you Doctor now.
So,
Dr. Roud.
if
Amazing.
I may say
that's incredible.
that.
Congratulations.
You cut that bit out if you like.
Yeah, that's amazing. Congratulations.
If you got it, flaunt it, as they say.
It's well deserved, because even in terms of the collections here, Tom Munnelly, the last full-time collector working in the field for the Department of Folklore as it was then, has been implementing your numbers into our manuscript collections, and we'll get on to that later, I suppose, in terms of those sorts of details. But yeah, I suppose just to emphasize again to listeners or viewers or people who are unaware of your work, the scope, the breadth, the depth, and the impact of your work is really important. Specialist sort of domain, basically, for which we're very appreciative. You mentioned then, I suppose, the at the start there, you were talking about one of the sort of defining characteristics of the types of material that you are interested in organizing and describing, and that it often that it's not so much the origin of a song, but it's the interactions of the people with that song. When we were chatting yesterday, I said I had this image often of, in terms of folklore archives, it's as though we're holding a piece of paper up and there's sort of light reflecting onto water, and the reflections are shimmering around on the paper, and we just take sort of stills of that paper at a moment in time, and those are the records that we have, but they're not the thing in itself. It's always sort of shifting and changing.
Indeed.
And so in the context of sort of thinking of the provenance of certain records, of certain songs, I wonder what are some of the issues or questions to consider in terms of, say, the record creator in a formal archival context might be a quite straightforward question, your records, my records, or a State Department's records. But in the context of folk song or items of folk tradition, who are the record creators? Do we have multiple record creators, or how should we think about the sort of the multiple agents that interact with these texts or songs or whatever it is?
Yeah, and as we've said in our conversations and yesterday, and we're told, folklore is messy. By definition, there's no getting away from it, because anything can be included in folklore, because anything can be passed on informally and so on. But when you're talking about song, which is my little field, my subsection of folklore, if you like, one of the things that makes it messy and makes it interesting is that we have this what we call multiple agents. In other words, with a pop song, you have the performer is the key person or group. You may know the author, but it doesn't always matter. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. With classical music, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, it's a symphony. It's by Beethoven, and it's number 5. It's all well organised and well recognised. So discographers and bibliographers can do their thing with it. With a folk song, the key person is the singer, the performer, because that's what we're interested in, is the people. But you also have a collector. In other words, the person who came along and prompted that person to sing that song at that time. They have prejudices and they have an agenda. They want this song and not that song, so they are mediating. You've also got intermediaries. I'm going to tell you about my mum's song. So it's my mum's song that you're collecting, but through me. Yeah. But if I sing my mum's song, then it's my song. Yeah. It's my version I'm singing you, not my mum's.
And she didn't compose that song necessarily.
Well, exactly. Yeah, there's a whole range of people involved.
Yeah.
Not only in the creation and performance of the item itself, but also in how it has got to us. So if I'm indexing a book, I have to say, okay, is the author truly reflecting what was sung by the person, or have they fiddled about with it? Yeah. I have this rule: never let a poet edit folk songs, because they can never leave anything alone. Yeah. So there's questions of authenticity, there's questions of who's had their finger in it.
Mm-hmm.
But the gold standard is, this is Eddie Butcher singing the song on Wednesday the 4th of November 1925. Now, if we've got a sound recording, we can say that's as close to the actuality as we're ever going to get, because we can never go back to November the 4th.
Yeah.
But if it's a book that's based on, or a manuscript that somebody has based it on the recording, then it's second level, and so on.
Yeah.
We're juggling with that in folklore all the time.
Yeah, layers of meaning,
layers
and
of meaning.
text and context,
and authenticity.
Yeah.
You can never really say that unless you're in the room with the singer and he or she is singing the song, you can never get back to that authenticity.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating because in ways it seems like at this point, at a high level at least, there's an overlap between sort of formal archival concerns, historically at least, and the concerns of folklore archives, in the sense of, although they're dealing with very different types of records, often with different approaches and intellectual trajectories behind them, there's a concern about the record as a sort of vehicle for evidence of some sort of evidence of some sort, and the importance of context.
Yeah.
But also, separate to the text itself, text and context. But what's really important to emphasize to people as well is, just as you said, in folklore archives, we're often navigating records with so many layers of intermediaries between, as you say, the collector, the singer, or the informant, as they're often described, if they're sort of describing a custom or telling a story or singing a song, whatever. The collector, their own biases, and in particular, I suppose you'd see in 19th century collections, a lot of the poets, creative people, reacting creatively to things, and embellishing things linguistically, and so on. The same thing would happen with legends and folktales and so on. Whereas, interestingly, in terms of folk tradition, songs often seem like they're sort of, all those details are sandblasted away over time, and just the core, sort of the essential core, sort of remains.
Yeah. One of the things that I say is that we're always trying to get the collectors out of the way, in effect. Although I have great respect for people like Tom Munnelly, who is one of your main collectors for here. His collection reflects what he found, what he was interested in, where he went. So there's always an element of Tom in everything there. But I'm working this morning on the Donogh MacDonagh collection. Donogh MacDonagh was presenting a radio programme on ballads in the 1940s, and he said, well, send me your songs. So people wrote in with their songs. And that's what I'm working on. I'm not particularly interested in Donogh MacDonagh, although it was his impetus. But people are self-collecting. They are sending in. Nobody's telling them, I want this song and not that song. They're just writing out their favourite song and sending it in.
Yeah.
So again, that's nearer to the real thing. That's better evidence.
And so would you say then that you have a sort of preoccupation or concern, not so much with, in a way, the data itself, the objects, the text, the songs, but with ordinary people's, the cultural expressions, that the songs that ordinary people valued? Is that sort of fair?
Yes. I mean, it's not just what they valued, but that's the main thing, because that's what made it a folk song in the first place. They liked that song.
They liked that song,
enough to learn it, remember it, sing it.
Yeah.
If they didn't like it, and that's the basis of the definition of folk song, if you like, that people select what they like. So if it's a bad song, bad in inverted commas, if it doesn't hit the spot, it dies out.
Yeah.
In the oral tradition. I mean, it could live on in print, of course. But I'm always. I mean, it sounds rather highfalutin for an indexer to say I'm concerned with all of these theoretical things, because basically, I'm working through the manuscript saying, here's this song. If you want this song, here it is. Come and get it. That's what the indexer's job is. But behind that, there's all this stuff of authenticity and evidence and context.
Biases, silences, gaps.
Yeah. And we're always trying to get the biases out the way.
It seems like they'll sort of always be, well, I feel like they'll always be there. We're always looking at something and not looking at other things. Like, for example, this is a sort of a question I suppose you must get leveled at you like all the time. But how do we define what gets in the door in terms of a folk song? Like,
tell me about it. How long have you got?
Yeah,
You know, and you know, everybody. The trouble with the word like folk, especially with song, everybody will have their own definition.
Yeah.
And the more of a fan they are of the subject, then the more entrenched they will be in that definition, because they always want to count themselves, if they are performers, they want to count themselves as traditional.
Yeah.
And they don't want me to come along and say, no, you're not. So I'm very careful not to say to people, no, you are not traditional. All I say is I'm a historian. I'm interested in how it was. Really, I'm interested in how it was before the 1950s and 60s, when folk became a part of the music
Popular
industry.
Culture. Yeah.
And developed in so many different ways, you know, with folk rock and psycho folk and weird folk now and all kinds of other folks, because anybody can make up anything and call it folk.
Psycho folk, yeah.
So I hide behind the fact that I'm sort of a historian, because I don't want to get involved in defining what people do now.
Yes.
And for the past, it's still difficult. But all I can say is I'm interested in what ordinary people were doing.
Yeah.
In their ordinary lives, for themselves, by themselves. So they weren't being told what to do. They weren't singing what the local priest had told them to sing or not sing, or the teacher.
Yeah.
Like in a playground, a school playground.
Exactly. Yeah.
The things that the kids have learnt from the teacher, I'm not particularly interested in.
I know exactly what you mean.
The things they've learnt from each other, that's my stuff.
I often give that as an example to explain the sort of horizontal nature of tradition at times, that there are peer-to-peer groups of school children in the playground is a perfect example, where there's like a radio bandwidth of these traditional games that exist out there on their own, and children of a certain age are sort of passing in and out of that bandwidth, but it stays out there, it's in the yard now. But the games are changing, but adults aren't intervening with those games necessarily to sort of say these are the rules and these
have agency of their own, so they will bring in pop songs or
figures,
parodies or figures from a film or something. That will affect their games. They'll be playing COVID TIG, or tag, as you might call it now. So the children, the law isn't static; it's dynamic. But you're right. There is a horizontal
plane as well as a vertical. And it's also really important to note as well that like people have always, I suppose, responded creatively to expressions of folk traditions. You mentioned in terms of like the music industry boom, or you know, poets and writers in the 19th century on, or even today, sort of artists who are responding to the landscape of song and then interpreting it and doing it and putting their own stamp on that. But what you're interested in particular is something sort of slightly, that's not your particular concern. It's the mass of the quote unquote ordinary people's approaches to the songs that they were interested in, that are beyond the frame of sort of popular culture, mass culture, consumer culture, etc.
And classical elite culture.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But even that's messy.
Yeah,
I mean, it always is messy.
There's
because
always
the higher, even in the highest echelons of English society, you know, the aristocrats and the nobility and stuff, if they served in the army, then they will have picked up songs in the barracks, in the mess, orally. You know, they would know some dirty songs from their army days, if you see what I mean. If they are from the nobility, they probably, I'm talking about the old days, had a working class nurse or maids in the kitchen who would bring them up singing little ditties and stuff. So even people from a relatively high social status will have some folklore,
of course,
in even though they might spend their evenings at the opera or the ballet, which is not my interest, they'll know a little ditty from their army days.
I think it's really important to note as well, because even the Folklore Commission had such strong biases in its earlier days, where it stated basically that there were lots of types of people who didn't have folklore. Urban people had no folklore.
That's right. Urban people don't have folklore.
Yeah. So and then there's an entire, again, it's like the gaps and silences in the formal archive can just be repeated in the folklore archive. I think it's really important for people to be aware of that it's not black and white. That these biases and perspectives are everywhere, shot through the archive. But that doesn't mean that we get to or should just throw the data or the material or the experience or the context or the subtext or the sort of these fragmentary records away. But often we have to work with gaps
with it.
and work between them. In terms of the collections and the sort of sources and formats, what sort of, you mentioned initially when you started books and records, but what sort of formats do you use to include in the Roud Index?
Right, well, in effect, any format, anything that's got a folk song in it. I started, as one does, I started in pre-computer, pre-internet days anyway, and because I had no academic training, I didn't really know about archives and manuscripts and stuff, so it was records, pre-CDs even. Yes, it was LP records, and books that I could get hold of, and that kept me busy for a while, and English stuff. I mean, really only English material. But then, as I got more involved and learned a bit more about it, and my new girlfriend, who is now my wife, was working in a library, and she said, I was bumming around. I didn't really have a job, put it that way. After I left school, I bummed around a bit, misspent youth. Because I'll say this as what I learned from that period is that it's easy to drop out. It's not so easy to drop back in again. Anyway, she said, why don't you get a job in a library? You like books. And I said, all right then. So I got a job in a library. And then things started to open up. Then I started knowing that there were catalogues and bibliographies and manuscripts. Sorry, I've gone off the point here.
No, not at all.
The point being that you start with what you can get to in my kind of world. Well, in our world. Yeah. You know, if it's records and books, then you start there. But then you learn this stuff behind it. Yeah. And then I joined the Folklore Society, became their Honorary Librarian. That gave me access to University College London, and so on. So, to cut a long story short, published material like LPs and books, obviously my first port of call. But in our world, a lot of the published material, especially in Ireland, is local. It's a little booklet put out by the Historical Society. Correct. It's somebody's memoirs, that kind of thing. And they're really valuable because precisely because you can't find them and because there hasn't been a collector involved. Yeah. So just because something's published doesn't mean you can get to it. But then, after the printed stuff, I then move on to the unpublished manuscripts and recordings. And then there's the complete other world of newspapers. I mean, now they're online. It's a doddle compared to how it used to be. But newspapers have all of social history in them, you know, because they've written at the time for the local people. Things like that, and as I say, the internet's now given us access to, you know,
quote unquote,
the world. Yeah. So I'll index any song that I'm interested in any format, in the English language, of course. Yeah. Anywhere in the world. So, you know, small job.
I think, exactly. I think what you said there is really important about when you started to work in that library, realising about catalogues and indices. And I think that's really important for younger people as well, who have an interest often in the expressions either of folk culture or of literature or culture in general, cultural memory and so on, who often don't know that there's an array of jobs that you can do in these places behind the material, with the material, in terms of managing collections, preservation of collections, description, arrangement, where you're really working closely with the life cycle of these collections, and then with also facilitating and sort of guiding and helping people, connecting them to the material, which sometimes matches natural temperaments that we don't realize. Oh, yes. I'm a librarian, I'm an archivist, I'm a folklorist, and you have no idea.
You don't realise.
And then you wander into this realm like, oh my God, this is the thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's fascinating what you're saying about, again, it's the sort of messiness of multi-format collections, and then the reasoning behind in folklore archives of why we have such multi-format collections, because there are no formal records of or often there are very few formal records of the types of material we're interested in. And there are no blueprints, formal architectural blueprints for traditional dwellings. And so those records need to be generated through fieldwork, and they're generated in whatever the technology of the time is: wax cylinders, pieces of paper, maps, sketches, then technology changing, tape recordings, acetate discs, mini discs, blah, 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 blah. And so you have these really multi sort of format collections, as you described, that then need to be parsed through and described in all sorts of ways, which would, in the context of digitization, then you can raises all sorts of problems or challenges, we should say, in terms of how to overcome that. So I think in terms of sort of planning your search, or planning your research for those who are interested in researching aspects of folk song, I wonder if you could take people through the 4 W's that you mentioned.
Yes. Something I think I've made them up. It's possible that I've read it somewhere. My 4 W's. Well, there are actually 6, but 2 of them we'll come on to. But what I try to say to people is that when I'm indexing, and it's pretty much backtrack a little bit. One of my points of view, which we've talked about quite a lot here, because I think, you're a folklore archive, you understand this kind of thing. The problems that I have as an indexer or a cataloguer, what information should I write down, what information should I record, are the same problems that the end user have. How can I find this information? This is what I'm interested in. Because I'm a librarian, my first thought when I pick up a book or an archive is, who's going to use this and what are they going to need from it? What questions are they going to ask? So, and I think I did this, as I said earlier on, instinctively. I don't know how, but right from the start I realised who, what, where, when. That's the key to it's not the same for all fields, but it is for folklore. Who is it that sang this song, told this tale? Because that's the gold standard. They are the performer. So the who is the performer and the collector and all of the people we've talked about. Mm-hmm. The what is the song. Not only what song is it, but what kind of song is it and what subjects are in there and stuff. So the what is a big thing. It's not just the song.
Yeah, there's a lot of what.
Yeah. So there's who and what. Where, as folklorists, we are obsessed with geography. The people in Limerick sang differently to the people in Dublin, or did they? Mm-hmm. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Where did the singer come from? And that is different to, say, a discographer of jazz, for instance, who are obsessed with where the recordings were made.
Yeah.
This was made in New York.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So if I've got a singer, an Irish singer who was recorded in London, I don't care that he was recorded in London. He's not a London singer, he's an Irish singer. Mm-hmm. So that's the where. And then the when is, again, we are obsessed in folklore because things change. Is that person singing to me on that tape from 1984 or 1904? That really matters to me.
Yeah.
But also, not only when are they singing it, but when did they learn it? Did they learn it the day before because I was coming? Mm-hmm. Or did they learn it from their granny?
Yeah.
And if so, when did she learn it?
Yeah.
So the who, what, where, when is how I organise my index entry, because I know that those are the things that people are going to ask for.
Yeah.
I know that people are going to be either interested in the song, the place, the person, or the date.
Mm-hmm.
And the other two, when I say there are 4 W's, the other two are how, which isn't a W at all, and why. Now, as an indexer, I can't really go into the how very much, because there's no, I mean, you can say, oh, they had a high voice, or they decorated their singing a lot, but in manuscripts you don't get that information anyway.
Yeah.
So the how I can't really touch. And what prompted them to sing, why they sang that song, is really beyond the pale of the indexer as
That's
well.
what I want to get to say. Why is this song important?
Yeah.
Why are they singing this or not singing this?
Yeah, that's right. For 95% of the time, we don't have that information anyway. It's only if a collector has said to the informant, sing me your favourite song. Why is that your favourite song?
Yeah.
And of course, for most manuscripts and certainly books, we don't have that information.
Mm.
But it is vital to understanding
the context.
The context and the culture, yeah.
Sorry, I'm shuffling madly with pieces of paper
That's all right.
here. But one of the things that I wanted to sort of move to in the context, to sort of step towards the index in a way, as well, is, so we've talked about these very messy, multi-format collections where many different people many different intermediaries have sort of engaged with this object, for want of a better word, a song, that is transmitted from person to person. And that can be singers, collectors, the people from whom it was taught, people who transcribe it in manuscripts, people who publish these things in books, people who publish these things on LPs, and so on and so forth. But a lot of people will be, quote unquote, singing the same song in very different contexts. In
Yes.
England, Scotland, Wales, Cornwall, Ireland, Canada, America, or even, because we're talking about English, or the English language world, basically.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
forgive me, English language world, but through the medium of English, basically. But how do we think of, how are these songs to be sort of coherently categorized or understood, and what are slippery titles that you talk about?
Right, yes. I mean, again, it's a mess.
We're noticing a theme
term
here.
we use a lot. It's a mess. Well, yeah, in folklore, certainly, we are obsessed, again, with a comparative notion of the world, because people tell a folk tale, the next person learns it and then they tell it, and somebody else tells it, and then we find that tale, same with songs, turns up in America and it turns up in Ireland but not in England. Oh, that's interesting, Or, the Scots have a version with a king in it and the Irish have a version with a queen in it. You know what I mean? This notion of many versions, many variants, many people involved is interesting in its own right from a textual point of view. So I can compare the different song texts, and that's interesting. That that you sing something and my granddad sang something else. We can get a lot from that. We can get information about how does the tradition work. One of the things is, one of the things that seems to be natural is localization. In other words, by the time the song has got from you to my community, somebody has changed the place names because it's more relevant to me if it's about England than with Irish place names in there. Or alternatively, to make it more exotic, they've put into Irish place names that weren't there before.
Yeah.
So that's a small example of how you can work from the texts, if you've got enough of them,
Mm-hmm.
and work out what's happening in the tradition. What does the tradition do to songs? The fact that most songs that go back to the 17th century in the 17th century, they were 3 times as long as they are now. They really did have 20, 30 verse songs. Mm-hmm. Whereas now, if it's got more than 6 verses, people are going, come on, oh my God, this is a long song. And what's been cut out in the meantime? So how do you cut down a 20 verse song to a 6 verse song and still tell the story?
Yeah.
So we can work from the texts themselves to get information on a wider scale. Mm-hmm. But you can only do that if you've got enough versions, if you've got enough data.
Enough versions of the same song.
Of the same song. Well, or of the same theme. I mean, how do Irish songs treat suicide? Because it's a Catholic country, suicide is a bigger deal in the Catholic Church than it is in the Church of England. Mm-hmm. So can we say that Irish songs treat suicide, and there's lots of suicides in folk songs, do you treat songs differently to us?
And
do you see what I mean?
How are songs about suicide treated in tradition?
I don't know.
We were talking about this.
You
made a really good point yesterday, because remember you were saying about that in terms of the description.
Oh yes, yeah. One of the problems that we have, if we're going to talk in a minute about subject indexing, is that songs aren't natural life. They are not even natural language. They are poetic language.
Yeah.
So there are songs about suicide, quite a lot of them, but they don't use the word ever in a folk song, as far as I know.
It's fascinating.
Never says, I'm unhappy. Then she committed suicide. It says, she's unhappy. She threw herself in the river. He was unhappy, so he stabbed himself with his sword or drank cold poison. In other words, we have to tease out those themes, because you can't just get the text and
they're not explicit in the text.
Yeah,
they are in terms of the meaning, but not in terms of the word that is.
Yeah, they are not real. You have to keep reminding yourself the song isn't a photograph, a snapshot of society at the time. It's an interpretation, and it's a poetic one, a symbolic one.
Does this go, do you think, to what you said before about that we need to bear in mind? Sorry, I might not get this right. What a song features.
Oh. Yeah, in subject indexing, one of the not exactly mistakes, but one of the things that people do, which I disagree with, so we call them mistakes, is that from a librarian and indexer point of view, is that they say, what is this song about?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's
a fair question.
Which is a fair question. What is the song about? And the answer is, it's a love song. I mean, you can do it at the broad general level, but what people are interested in isn't so much what it's about, is what does it feature? What is in the song? So the broad term love is all very well, but who's interested in all love songs? It's this particular.
It might be a murder ballad where the sweetheart is
killed.
Exactly.
The love can lead to a murder, or it can lead to a wedding.
Yeah.
So you can't really say that a song like a photo isn't about the thing in the middle. It's also got this other stuff. It features other things. So in folklore, we're often asked by radio producers or people who are writing a play or whatever, I want a song with daffodils in it. The song isn't about daffodils.
Yeah.
But the boy and the girl walk in a field full of daffodils. That's what they want. They want the daffodils as a feature, not as a subject.
Yeah. So you were mentioning there about the importance of I suppose what could be described in sort of dry terms as large data sets, lots of variants and versions, in order to parse through and look at the contextual differences between, or the representations of how they differ between England and Ireland, for example, in one song. But if a user of your index wants to either do some really deep research into the history of a particular song, or its popular usage, or just wants to learn the words of a song to sing that evening.
Yeah.
And they go to sort of we mentioned sort of slippery titles, or they enter a title. Are folk song titles reliable as an anchor for us to
see where you're going? But before we leave the big data thing, that's and again, I didn't know this until I'd done it. It's only when you've got a lot of information that you can start asking those sorts of questions
about patterns,
about the comparative nature of national traits within songs, what songs were popular, what weren't, what subjects were popular, what weren't. You can't do that properly until you've got access to not necessarily all the songs, but certainly a hell of a lot of them.
Yeah.
One of the problems in the past was that nobody could really grasp all of the songs. You could have a good library of songs and you could read all the songs, but you could never really grasp those big things, whereas we can now, because we can do a search on a particular song. We can do a search on Ireland, or on a particular county in Ireland, or a particular village in Ireland. We can do a search on male and female singers. So, before we had to rely on, I think women singers sang this kind of song, whereas now we can actually ask that question.
Who were the performers? Yeah.
So the big data thing is a bonus, if you like, because the index was primarily to just find the song.
Yeah.
I want to find a version of so-and-so. Where can I find it? So then we hit the real problem with folk songs, with folklore in general, but folk songs in particular, in that the data is slippery. It's unstable. There are 946, I think, versions of a song called The Gypsy Laddie, which is Roud number 1.
Yeah.
In the index, 946 versions. In that corpus, there's at least 100 different titles for that song, taking into account spelling, dialect spelling, old spelling, American spelling, and so on. So if you're searching for that song, there's no way you're going to find all of them unless you type in 100 different titles. And those titles can be completely different. I mean, about half of those have the word gypsy in. But that can be spelt in umpteen different ways. But a lot of the versions have no gypsy in the title at all, so you just can't find them. So that's where my Roud numbers come in.
Yeah.
So the Gypsy Laddie, I mean, that did have a number before. That's a child ballad, so it's child 200. But it's also Roud number 1. So if you want the Gypsy Laddie in all its versions, you put in Roud number 1 and you get who wants 946 versions? And that's not even the most popular one. Barbara Allen has thousands of entries. Anyway, so that's a finding aid. The number 1 is the finding aid for the whole corpus. But then you also get the 4 W's come in, because nobody wants all of those.
Yeah.
What they really want is the Irish versions.
Or just the American ones.
Or the American versions.
Yeah.
Right. So they can say Roud number 1 in Ireland, or in a part of Ireland, a county. They may only want the one sung by women.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite a common request from young folk singers these days, but women, female singers, they often want songs collected from women, obviously so.
Yeah.
So I index that as well. So you can search Roud number 1 in Ireland, collected from a female singer. And then your 946 gets down to a manageable 10 or something. And then you can make your choice. If it still comes down to, 200, then you've got to think about something else, maybe before 1950 or
think
whatever.
About your life.
To narrow it down. I mean, this is what we do.
Yeah.
With information.
Yeah.
Even though the Google search idea is sort of teaching us, and AI is teaching us, you just throw something in and you'll find what you want.
Well, it doesn't precisely the reason that you describe in the context of songs about suicide, in which if you're just mining text in the body of a song, the term that you're searching will not appear. So that we need to have these categories and subcategories and subcategories that relate to identifiable forms.
Yes.
And it's the same thing that we've had several conversations here about the subject index that's used to sort of as the key to these collections in the National Folklore Collection, which it's an amazing structure in itself. And then it poses all these problems when myself and colleagues here have spent a few years trying to create a controlled vocabulary, a thesaurus that could be used to convey culturally specific headings of topics and grouping of ideas together. It's really complex. It's really hard to do it because I feel like we have this, there's the sunlight reflecting off the water and we're capturing these sort of reflections, but we're never, it's like with life itself, as much as with these collections, with people, with relationships, we have to get used to or accept a certain amount of ambiguity, a certain amount of paradox, a certain amount of things being unfinished or problems that are just sort of, there is no answer to this particular. We can't wrap it up really and put a bow on it really neatly and here it all is. But the impulse that I often have here in terms of working through the collections is to try and, I particularly would love to bring the subject index into a sort of digital frame more clearly, so that people could, in order to connect people to material that they're interested in, without themselves having to understand the categories by which that material is arranged. Does that make sense?
But that's the whole dilemma of the professionals, the librarians, the archivists, the indexers, is that we know that it's complicated. And the more we look at it, the more complex it becomes. But our job is to make it simple for the user. And that's one of our problems, is that whereas in science or medicine or whatever, we can expect the user to come up to a certain level if they're going to engage with our material. You've got to learn the different words that they use in science. You've got to learn the way things are classified and that sort of stuff. Whereas our stuff, because it's everyday material, everyday subjects, people expect it to be everyday. They expect to be able to use common words rather than technical terms. But if we were talking about subject indexing right now, there's 4 of us in the room, and I'd say, shall we call this the category agriculture or farming? Right? Now, how's that those who would look up agriculture and half, the ones who think, it's official, use the official term. It should go in as agriculture. And the other half would be saying, no, nobody uses that word. I'd look up farming. So everything within our world of folklore has that thing,
Technical terms,
jargon, everyday terms, not to mention the fact that it's going to change over time, especially things that are contentious, like, what do you call ethnic minority? I used the word gypsy earlier on. Some people would immediately, you can't use the word gypsy. The way, we call them, because I'm not one of them, travellers. But I'm now told that travellers want to be called gypsies again. If I've put that into my database, I then have to go and change all my references.
It's a really complex. We're moving into to talking about thinking about users and archive users' needs, particularly in the context of digitization, where one of the things that was struck by even looking at, you're talking about variant and dialectical spellings of different terms that are frozen in time. So on the one hand, we have a sort of responsibility to the fixity of the record. We need things to be discoverable and searchable and findable. And at the same time, we need to parse through that in a sort of sensitive, ethical, careful way. There's always this balancing act that's happening between who's describing, who's setting the descriptors that go into the structures by which the records are conveyed, who's pushed out of that, who's included in that. I mean, and these are these questions will never end, and sometimes I feel like I don't have answers to them. I just have the questions, and I try to work in good faith with the questions as they arise.
There isn't usually an answer. There's more than one, but people want an answer,
which is understandable. Yeah. In the context of thinking about users and sort of what people are looking for and how they engage with the index and the material, I wonder, is it worth talking about digitization, and in particular your work on the National Folklore Collection in collaboration with their friends in Gaois agus Fionntar Scoil na Gaeilge in Dublin City University, DCU, hosts duchas.ie, duchas.ie for listeners who want to go onto that, where we host our digitized collections and make them freely available to the public, manuscripts, audios going up, photographic material and so on. And you have been working through that material and categorizing some of our records, like the school's manuscripts, with your numbers and numbering system. So I suppose there's two things I want to think about, being mindful of the time as well. But on the one hand, what has your experience been of using the site, and sort of critiques you might have of what you've encountered so far, or how we should think about approaches to description when conveying these collections in a digital context? And also, I'd like just to talk about Ireland a bit. What do you find here? For example, one of the major implications of your index is that it's only in the English language.
Yes.
So obviously, Irish language material. How should that or how can that be incorporated, or how can we do this for Irish language material in the same way? Nicholas Carolan yesterday asked about macaronic songs.
Yes.
How are they processed? Or highly localized songs that aren't the sort of level of the national repertoire, for want of a better word, of balladry, but are really local songs about a particular...
You've got an awful lot of those in Ireland.
Yeah, so I suppose maybe as we sort of... not immediately to bring this to a close, but at the last sort of final maybe block, to think about what has your experience been in terms of duchas and using the site and the digital sort of curation or publication of NFC materials and advice and critiques there, and also sort of what have you encountered in Ireland, and how has that impacted on your index, or problems thrown up, or is that too much to ask as two questions?
Yeah, we can. I have to say that I'm not an expert on Irish collections yet, because I started with the English ones, not because for nationalist reasons, but just because that's where I was, and that's where the material was. And I've worked through the English collections and pretty much done certainly all of the major manuscript collections and all the books and records and stuff. So the English stuff I know very well, and I have sort of been involved a bit in, for instance, the projects at the English Folk Dance and Song Society when they digitised their manuscripts. Well, it's not just their manuscripts, but they pulled together song manuscripts from all over the country as a sort of union catalogue. So I was a bit involved in planning that. So in a way, that's the model that I work to, in that they have an advanced search, for instance, and they're not going to get rid of the advanced search. Come on to that in a moment. It's built round the 4 Ws plus, as it were. So with the Irish collections, I haven't been at all involved. I'm just simply a user. I'm just simply a punter. And I haven't yet used them all. And Duchas is the one that I've used the most, because I'm literally working my way through finding the songs and entering them in the index. some people might immediately say, well, why am I doing that? Because you have your own, you do have catalogues, you are online already, so your stuff is discoverable. But my point is that catalogue that you've put online only works for your material. I know it's a stupid thing to say, but it's a catalogue of your material. Mm-hmm. Whereas my index is plugging that material into the other collections around the world and the other books and things.
International context.
So I'm indexing your catalogue, which a lot of people say, well, why do that? Why do it again? Mm-hmm. I do have to do it again because I have to plug it into the outside world. So I approach your Duca site, and I have to say that it's very good. I mean, on a lot of respects, I say it gets 12 out of 10. It's the best site that I know of for folklore materials. So, I, as a practitioner, I understand how much hard work must have gone into it and still is going into it. It's a hell of a job, hell of a thing. But one of the problems is size. There's always, the more you put in, the better it is, because that's more stuff to discover, but the harder it is to find things. Mm-hmm. Because if there's 10,000 records, you can cope, but if there's 500,000 records, things start to get messy. Mm. There's two major criticisms. One is that there isn't a proper advanced search. So you can't, well, by that I mean that, bearing in mind that the 4 Ws plus all the other fields that you're going to have, you can't really say, find me this word in the title field, right? Because, if there's 500,000 records, you've got to narrow it down. So I'm asking, find me this name as an informant, not as a collector. Yeah. Because, if there is an informant called Munnelly and a collector Tom Munnelly has collected 10,000 songs, and you're looking for this Munnelly, you'll never find him because him or her, because you'll be
in the noise.
You get too much. Anyway, so the key point is what you really need is an advanced search which allows you to specify the fields. I want this name, and I want it in Limerick, and I want it in the schools collection. In other words, building up a search strategy. Mm-hmm. So people who are just looking for a song, they just bang in a song title and hope for the best, whereas I'm talking about research. Every other folklore site that I work with, folk song site, almost, apart from the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library, the FDIS, which I've been involved in, are busy getting rid of their advanced searches.
And with the preference for sort of text?
The preference is for a Google type search, where you, and they say, AI will sort it out. That's another question. But because they're trying to popularise it, they're saying it, it's all fuddy-duddy stuff. We don't want this advanced search. Nobody uses the advanced search. I mean, it's true that only a small percentage do. But what I argue is that I want both. I want a popular site, which is all colourful and bells and whistles and things. But then I want a button saying, researchers
specify this.
Go here.
Yeah.
So if I was king of UCD, king of NCL, I would say you need an advanced search. And the second thing is at the cataloguing stage, and I know this is hard because if you're cataloguing different materials, you look at things differently. So an audio tape, you're working differently to a manuscript. But there hasn't been quite enough thought with marrying up
cross collections,
the different collections. So you can search within the audio collection quite nicely. You can search within the schools collection. But when you try to search across the three domains, as it were,
at once,
at the same time, which I do as a user, if I'm looking for a song, at first I don't care whether it's in manuscript or print. I'm looking for that song, so I want a global search. So the example that I used, because it's my field, song, it's not included in the list of topics in the school's collection, because at the time the school's collection was made, then song wasn't an important thing. Folk tales and things were more important. It's included under the word folk poetry.
Yeah.
So a user who's looking for songs doesn't know that.
No.
And so that's the first problem. But then in the main manuscripts, which is the separate section,
series,
song is included in the topics. But a lot of the time the cataloguer has, I think, looked at the material and thought, oh, that's a poem, so that's not a song. So it goes as, it's categorised as law, L-O-R-E, general law.
Yeah.
And in the audio collection, they've recognised that song is a category, but they've called it singing.
Stop, Steve, stop.
Yeah. Now, I know exactly how this has happened, and because I'm a cataloguer as well. I know how these things happen.
Yeah.
But just in my small world, that makes it incredibly difficult to find all the songs.
Yeah.
Now, not everybody wants all the songs.
Yeah.
But they do want to cross-search, and the same thing happens with other things, as I was saying yesterday, but children's games are not necessarily, they're not well, they weren't well done in the 1940s when your classification scheme was set up, so it's a historical thing. But, so I'd want two things, advanced search, and secondly, more clarity, if you like, or joined up thinking across the different collections. Because looking at it from a user point of view, they fail, but looking from a professional point of view, they're fine. And nobody knows that there's a problem. If you're working in the archive, nobody knows there's a problem till somebody like me pops up and says, hang on a minute.
Stop asking these hard questions, all these personal attacks. It's fascinating because as we sort of parse through collection by collection, working with the descriptors of that collection at that time, and then trying to sort of translate them into an online context, with each series, each collection having its own sort of mini cosmos in terms of how it's arranged and all that.
Yeah.
They go up there and then they're worked on, and even the catalog, some of the indices that are being used as guides to categorise that song material, which Sean O'Sullivan in an interim index has probably written Filiocht, Felix Filiocht. So it's down as poets and poetry. But when was something recited? When was it sung? And exactly as you say, across the different collections, there isn't a unified approach to song as an item. And that was only something that was revealed after the conversation we had to Zoom with yourself and Alban Eamon.
That's one of the problems. You don't know there's a problem until you have a go at it.
Correct. And it's something that goes beyond even the issue of folk song. Goes back to what we were saying earlier. When we look at a collection or a piece of material and think, what are people going to search for from this? What will people want from this? And I was saying to you yesterday about the example in the context of stone lifting, searching through, because often the finding aids were so blunt in relation to this particular expression of cultural heritage and tradition, using the transcribed text in the school's collection and searching for the term could lift, which would get huge amounts of people talking about lifting things, but within that there would be references to stones. But if I just enter stones, you're just getting sort of, again, it's just using this text. You get way too many and it's hard to sort of narrow these down. Yes. And so then on the other hand, then we're spending, and we were talking about farming versus agriculture in the context of subject index descriptors, and working on the control vocabulary and thesaurus for a digital subject index here for the NSC would only ever work on it with two of us at the same time. You'd never work on it alone because you go insane. And you always need, it was like someone, tie a rope around your colleague and they wander off into the mine, and when they kind of go mental, you have to pull them back out so that two people could actually do this work together, basically. But even at that, every time I open it and look at it, I want to start moving different parts around.
But the danger, and I've done this in my professional life, is that if you have too many involved,
of course.
Then, I mean, just tell you a story. Where I was local studies librarian, we were setting up a new unit in Croydon with the local studies library and the archive and a new museum. So we had 3 professions trying to work a one cataloguing system and one subject index. And our, as they say, a camel is a horse designed by a committee. We would have meetings about the thesaurus, about what, whether you're going to use agriculture or farming. And it was fascinating to watch. I mean, there's 6-8 of us in the room. Every word that came up, it would sometimes divide on male and female lines, quite literally in the room. It would divide on sometimes generation. The older people like me would say, oh, no, it's got to be far. Oh, no, it's got to be so-and-so. It was a nightmare because everybody was coming out, and it taught me the lesson that the people who are coming in as users, they're not coming in as blank users. They're coming in as young people, old people, male,
contexts,
female, Irish, English. They have this sort of bundle of attributes, as it were, and that's one of our problems as professionals, is that we're trying to cater for all of those people because we don't know whether the person entering our system is going to be, in which particular group.
Yeah.
Now, from a subject indexing point of view, the only hope is that the computer, bless it, can translate things in the way that you can't. In the card index, you had to put things into one place, and you had to put it under A for agriculture or F for farming. Now, you can, with your program search engine, say that anybody that searches for agriculture will be told use the word farming, or even if they're not told that, it'll do it automatically. It'll say, oh, by the way, we call it farming. Here you are. And that does happen already, but it happens on big sites, as it were. But for people like us, we have to actually make it happen.
Yeah,
we have to actually decide. What are we going to call this
thing
or that?
Yeah,
and you'll, as I say, once you get people in the room, everybody disagrees on everything.
Yeah. I could talk to you for just a million hours about these sorts of things. I think we better wrap it up there.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time, expertise, and for talking through these topics, problems of the field, defining the problems, thinking of the context, the interactions with the records, the messiness of the formats, of the data, of the text, and for all the work that you do here and the NFC, and how generous you are with your own time and expertise. And the index is hosted on the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library. I'll leave a link to that so people can go and use it. And just thank you so much for your time. And it's sometimes these problems in terms of description of folklore archives seem insurmountable, but again, like you were saying yesterday, or like you were saying at the start, you just start somewhere with your books, with your records. You start, and then you just sort of we have to start somewhere.
I think that's the moral of all of this, is that you start off. Well, I didn't realise it was going to be this complicated. I probably wouldn't have started if I'd have known. But you start off having a meeting and you say, "Oh my God, subject indexing, that's going to be a nightmare," and then
now look.
So you don't do it. We've got to. You've got to get past that. Oh, it's a nightmare. Oh, it's a mess. Let's get started.
750,000 references later. Here we are.
That's right. Yeah.
Steve, Dr. Roud, thank you so much. Thanks a million.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers, and thanks y'all for listening, watching. Margaret, Slán.